Hello, and welcome back, family, to Masquerade Monday. My name is Huddy, and tonight we're talking LA by Night. As always, this video is not scripted, and these opinions are all my own, so take what I say with a grain of salt. The epilogues have begun, kindred, and as Jason Carl said, the epilogues are short vignettes of the night that relate to the plot of the current season, but also foreshadow what is to come. And since you guys have spoken and want a video for every epilogue, let's get on with it, shall we? As much as I hate a season to end, I do have to say some of my favorite moments in LA by Night have happened during epilogues, so I was super excited to sit down for this first one featuring Victor Temple, played by B. Dave Walters, and Nines Rodriguez, played by Luis Carrazzo. The epilogue opens inside of the last round, the, let's call it, personal domain of Baron Nines Rodriguez in downtown LA. Jason Carl goes into great detail explaining that this very old-fashioned bar still exists among the concrete jungle that has sprung up around it, that it is a vestige of some bygone decade that still thrives among the new, trendy businesses surrounding it. Victor Temple has arrived alone to speak with his fellow barons specifically about the state of Therese and to catch him up on the recent events that have occurred in the season finale. After traditional pleasantries, Victor immediately hands Nines his rosary, who takes it without reservation. As affable and agreeable as Victor always appears to be, he knows the game, understands that no kindred can truly be trusted. Even though he sees Nines as a friend and ally, precautions must still be taken, and Victor knows a certain Malkavian who can make use of that rosary now that Nines has touched it. Victor talks his best Ventrue talk as he explains the situation to Nines, pithy and concise, but Nines wants the full story and more than that, wants to know Victor's true thoughts and feelings on their current situation, not just what has happened with the fracturing of his coterie, but about the Camarilla, Therese, and the truce. It takes a bit of back and forthing, but eventually Victor admits that he thrives under this type of pressure, that the worse things get, the better he seems to be able to handle it. He also divulges that he's trying to be better, which he has been saying since season 2, that he's trying not to interfere with his coterie's personal lives, trying to let them make their own mistakes, and trying to allow anyone who's willing to throw themselves behind the Anarch cause a place in his barony. Nines is a voice of incredible reason and perspective in this epilogue. I said it in my episode 4 recap, but Luis Carrazzo plays him so brilliantly I cannot heap more praise on his performance. Now, when most people think about Bruja, they think rabble, troublemakers, and leather jackets, but there's this whole other side to the clan that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Now, my very first lore video for Masquerade Monday was all about Bruja, which you can watch here, but very briefly, the Bruja are philosopher warriors. They are as much idealists as they are unruly rebels. They are and were a learned clan who cultivated Carthage into utopia, or so they claim, jury is still out on that, and this duality of fighter and philosopher shines brightly out of Nines throughout the epilogue. Nines launches into a speech I wouldn't have thought Victor needed to hear until I heard it, honestly, and lets Victor know that he hasn't had enough failure, that he needs to fail more. The challenges and obstacles haven't cost them nearly enough. Victor laughs this off, but Nines isn't amused. Nines asks him how many of his coterie he's lost since the Camarilla has rolled into town, and we all know the answer to that. Mark interrupts in this moment, curling a cinder block with one arm. Mark seems cordial with his father, and Victor is curt but friendly with his son, which is always nice to see considering their history. Victor asks Mark to get in touch with Annabelle, that she went through some tough stuff recently and that she hasn't checked in. Mark agrees and remarks that the thing he loves most about Annabelle is that she hasn't fully embraced all this vampire stuff, that she's still holding on to her humanity. Victor agrees that it is a strength, and Mark excuses himself to head off on patrol with some of Nines' coterie. Falling right back into their conversation, Victor reminds Nines that as much as he loves cuddly Uncle Nines, when things go down, he needs the ice in the veins badass fighter to come out and be their Hulk. Nines notes that this is the second time Victor has told him this, and he says that he's in it, he's ready to fight. But he needs Victor to be real with him, to come to him with his issues. As I said before, kindred by their nature don't trust each other, and I get the impression from this conversation that this is Nines' way of establishing some sort of confidence or rapport with Victor. Victor brings up his encounter with the Lupine, strikes a chord that we met back in Season 1, and shows Nines his scars. Now, fans of Bloodlines 1 know that Nines has a bit of a legend formed around him because he went toe-to-toe with a werewolf, and not only survived, but killed them. Nines divulges that although he took the lupine down in order to save his own unlife, he acknowledges that the lupine was young, just a pup, and that he regrets that he wasn't able to talk to them as opposed to taking them down. Victor then brings up the beckoning and suggests that it's the reason McNeil left, the reason he abandoned the cause. Again, fans of Bloodlines 1 know the name McNeil because Nines brings him up a few times in dialogue, and we have heard him mentioned in LA by Night, but not since Season 2 if memory serves. Jeremy McNeil is one of the most famous anarchs and one of the founders of the Anarch Free States in California. Now, McNeil's history is a little complicated, unaided by the fact that his story after forming the Anarch Free States is heavily involved with the Wan Kuei or Kuei Jin to Bloodlines 1 fans. I haven't talked about Kindred of the East on this channel, and honestly I don't really want to. I find the lore a bit problematic in places, but for the sake of talking about McNeil, I'll mention them briefly. The Wan Kuei, or Cathayans, as some Kindred call them, are considered vampires of Asia, but they don't have a whole lot in common with Cainites, besides having a hunger for blood. In the late 90s, the Wan Kuei made decided attacks or invasions against the Western Kindred, and one of those invasions occurred in California, causing a collapse of the Anarch Free States and fracturing Anarch forces. McNeil did his best to keep the Free States together, but couldn't hold that burden alone for long and went into hiding. Although rumors have circulated for years that he met the final death, the last place he was known to be is San Jose. If he is still unalive and hasn't been pulled to the beckoning, could we see him in LA by Night in the future? It's at this point that Victor goes into almost complete detail of what occurred in the season finale. Obviously, the rapport with Nines is working, but oddly he leaves out the fact that X tried to diablerize Annabelle. Now, we know that Victor doesn't know that X and Annabelle vision with Share the Senses, of him taking her essence and using her abilities to achieve his ends, but maybe Victor thinks that telling Nines the whole truth, that Annabelle was almost killed by a member of their coterie, wouldn't sit well with him. It's at this moment, Delilah, the leader of the Thin Bloods in the Valley, texts Victor, and Victor puts it on speakerphone and introduces her to Nines. Delilah thanks Victor again for rescuing Blake and tells Victor that her and all her people, all the Duskborn, are ready to throw their weight behind Victor and the Anarch movement, but on one condition. They don't want to wait for the fight to come to them. They don't want to wait to be picked off one by one, that if the Camarilla doesn't apply the truce to them, then they don't care about the truce. Victor doesn't agree to this term in any certain terminology, but asks if he can talk to her personally at her club, The Deep. Delilah agrees, and Victor wraps up his meeting with Nines, saying that although he doesn't want to break the truce, he doesn't want to antagonize the Thin Bloods or let them get killed by the Camarilla. Nines is in total agreement and encourages Victor, before the Duskborn mount up, to somehow get a message to the Ivory Tower, to let them know that hurting Thin Bloods in any way is breaking the truce. That if the Camarilla crosses that line, then the truce is officially off. Before Victor goes, they briefly touch base about Therese, and they both seem to be in agreement that even though Therese looks out for Therese, she is still one of their own and they need to protect her from the Camarilla from this blood hunt. Honestly, I don't know how I feel about this, but I can guess how X will feel about this. As Victor leaves, he sees Mark gearing up to go on patrol, and Mark stops him to let him know that he got in touch with Annabelle and asks his father, "Who is Carver?" If you haven't already, please go follow the World of Darkness Twitch channel and subscribe to them on YouTube. If you can, sub to their channel on Twitch and support their sponsors Backblaze and Level Up Dice. All links can be found in the description. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to me as well for new content every Masquerade Monday, and let me know your thoughts on Epilogue 1, Compelled to Injure, in the comments. Thank you so very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!